Israel is reporting its first combat deaths inside Lebanon, a day after announcing it was conducting raids there. Hezbollah militants say they've clashed with Israeli troops who infiltrated a border village. Now, Israel says it's now deploying irregular infantry and armoured units as it expands efforts to stop Hezbollah's cross-border attacks. Israel Defense Forces also carried out more airstrikes in southern Lebanon and elsewhere, including the capital Beirut. Hezbollah said it fired missiles towards the northern Israeli city of Haifa. Well, journalist Karim El-Gohari is in the Lebanese capital. Welcome back, Karim. What are you hearing of these clashes between Israeli troops and Hezbollah fighters?
Well, it's really difficult to get an independent picture. What is happening really in the southern front here between Lebanon and Israel. As we heard, there is what the picture that is coming here is that this is not a walkover for the Israeli army. We have the first Israeli combat death, and Hezbollah is also claiming that it destroyed 3 Israeli Merkava tanks. So it seems like, at least the picture that comes from here, from Lebanon, from Hezbollah, that they face the Israeli army in 2 different places today, in Odessa and in Yarun. These are 2 villages in the very vicinity of the Israeli border. And for example, Yarun, I was there 3 weeks ago with a patrol of the UNIFIL, of the UN observers, passing through Yarun. And they were telling me that this is one of the absolute trouble spots. And it seems that this was also the case today. Hezbollah seemed to have laid an ambush in both places, inflicted casualties on the Israeli army, who then, as Hezbollah says, had to return. So it's not as easy as, for example, we have this complete air superiority of Israel over Lebanese airspace. Of course, going via land into Lebanon is a very, very different story. And this is a similar story that repeats itself, like we had seen this already in the last war, 2006, that the trouble of the Israeli really started the moment they put their boots onto the ground in Lebanon.
Now, I understand you've also been to Beirut's southern Dahihyeh district, which has suffered under Israeli attacks. What did you see there?
Well, that was the first time that journalists could come into this district, since it is heavily bombarded by the Israeli side. It's also heavily guarded by Hezbollah. You cannot just go in there, walk in there and talk to people or film without having any permit of Hezbollah. So today, Hezbollah organized a trip for journalists. Several hundred journalists took part in this trip. We went in there. First thing that was very obvious is like the whole southern suburbs is a ghost town. All the shops are closed. There's really, you see hardly anyone on the street, hardly any car driving through. It's really a ghost town. And then, of course, they led us to the various places of destruction. Some houses completely flattened, another area, wider area, where several houses were flattened. So a lot of destruction. And of course, the big question is like, how strong, when you walk through the southern district, you see all this destruction of this Hezbollah stronghold. The big question you ask yourself is like, how strong is Hezbollah after all these hits in the southern suburb, after losing all its military commanders? But the picture we got today from the front, from the Israeli military offensive on the ground, shows us somehow that the military structure of Hezbollah seems to be still intact.
OK, thank you, Karim. Journalist Karim El-Gohari in Beirut.
You're welcome.
Well, our Beirut bureau chief, Mohamad Chreyteh, has been to the city's southern Dahihyeh district, where the IDF has been targeting what it says are Hezbollah facilities.
I am here in Dahihyeh, the southern suburbs of Beirut. This is known to be a Hezbollah stronghold, but it's also home for hundreds of thousands of Lebanese civilians and families. It's also very close to Lebanon's only civilian airport, actually a few hundred meters away from here. And it's 4 to 5 kilometers away from the heart of the city, in the city center. As you can see behind me, the huge destruction caused by Israeli airstrikes in this area. It has been intensive waves of airstrikes on this area and elsewhere in Beirut. But Israel is saying that it's targeting Hezbollah infrastructure here in this area in Dahihyeh. Hezbollah, who's organizing this visit for the media, for the press, says, along with many other civilians that we spoke to here, says that there's no military infrastructure here. And in fact, what you see behind me is said to be a residential building for Lebanese civilians and some other civilian facilities like shops and so on. We will continue moving with Hezbollah personnel here to visit this area. And as you see behind me, this is a fresh airstrike. We've been told that this happened in the early morning, in the early hours of the morning in this area. The smell of gunpowder is very annoying here, but I could smell gunpowder all across the city, all across Beirut. As you can see some civilians here praising Hezbollah. Well, shouting in defy for Israel and the US. We've been told these were residents of this compound of 6 buildings here were destroyed, completely destroyed. Very close to here, last week Israel conducted the most intense airstrike here in Dahihyeh, killing the chief of Hezbollah, Hassan Nasrallah. And as you see behind me, this is a compound of 6 residential buildings set to the ground in an Israeli airstrike in the early hours of this morning. So we really need to be on the go. Hezbollah is now saying that we should leave the area. It's not a safe place. It's still targeted by Israeli airstrikes, and we continuously hear Israeli drones overhead.
And Tanya Chreyteh is covering events for us from Jerusalem. Tanya, bring us up to date. What more do we know about Israel's ground incursion and the reported deaths of several Israeli soldiers?
Yeah, just a short while ago, the Israeli military, the IDF here, released the names of 7 more soldiers. That brings the death toll to 8 soldiers that were killed in, as they say, combat in southern Lebanon. And this comes just 2 days after they launched what they described, at least in the beginning, as a limited incursion, a targeted and limited incursion into southern Lebanon. This probably shows, it gives an indication how difficult the terrain is there for the soldiers, and also, you know, all these concerns, what will happen. And also maybe it gives an indication that this might become a larger ground offensive in the area, because, as you rightly said, another division had been called up to the northern border, as well as several villages in the area. They have been told to leave the area, actually very, very far away, even beyond the Litani River. Now, the Litani River is has been part of the UN Security Council resolution that ended the war in 2006, and at that time it was said that Hezbollah should retreat north of the Litani River, and this is now even beyond that. So this gives an indication that this ground invasion could become larger. We are not aware of all the details, how many soldiers have been crossing the border. And this comes, of course, also while we are seeing this escalation with Iran, and we are waiting also a retaliation by Israel against this, the missile attack from last night.
How is the Israeli public reacting to all of this, Tanya?
Well, I think you can say there is really substantial support for Israel's offensive against Hezbollah, but that pertains mainly to the air campaign. It becomes a bit more difficult when it comes to a ground invasion, depending on how this will look like, how this will play out, and already having so many soldiers killed after 2 days, that might be of concern to many Israelis. So the public opinion then could also change depending on how this will change. But I think there is strong support for the government to end the situation, because even today air raid sirens went off over the course of the day in the northern area, with rockets being launched at northern Israel. And this has been the aim of the Israeli government ever since we've seen this escalation from the Israeli side, to bring those residents that have left last year. I mean, a year ago, we are approaching the anniversary of the October 7 terror attacks, and then Hezbollah joined in on October 8. And ever since, we have seen this cross-border fire between Israel and Hezbollah. So this is what they're aiming to bring back the people, and that's why there is also substantial support to continue the offensive against Hezbollah.
Tanya, thank you so much for that update. That's DW correspondent Tanya Chreyteh reporting from Jerusalem.